After 7 years since the cancellation of Netflix's Daredevil series, Matt Murdock has been born again. The man without fears found himself a new home on Disney+, and I can't help but rejoice and give thanks to everyone who played a part in this show's revival. Daredevil Born Again has been incredible so far. Every episode has me on the edge of my seat, thrilled to see what kind of situation Matt finds himself in next. But also, I'm a little sad, because like nearly all of Daredevil's stories over the past 4 decades, Matthew Murdock's life is a living hell. Ever since he was a child, Matt has been stricken by misfortune. His dad, boxer Jack Murdock, was killed by the mobsters he worked for in order to make ends meet for his family. When Matthew sees a blind man on the verge of getting hit by a truck, he springs into action and saves his life. But no good deed goes unpunished, and Matt gets exposed to the dangerous chemicals that the truck was carrying, losing his eyesight as a result. Of course, the radioactive spunk also gives him supernatural abilities that eventually aid in his crusade against crime, but it's this superhero persona that makes his life even more tragic. In the comics, Matthew has gone through devastating breakups due to his emotional instability and dangerous alter ego. The only sidekick Daredevil's ever recruited, Samuel Chung, aka Blindspot, had his eyes gouged out by one of his enemies, the Muse. And worst of all, Matthew witnessed Elektra and Karen Page, 2 important women in his life, die at the hands of his arch nemesis, Bullseye. The life of Daredevil is one constantly in shambles. Spiritually, emotionally, physically, and mentally, Matthew has led a living of extreme suffering and anguish, so much so that almost every issue of modern Daredevil contains a line of dialogue or a caption box referencing just how tortured the guy is. But it's that darkness that makes Daredevil so captivating for so many of us. Whether Matt finds himself at his wit's end in a criminal trial, or has the odds stacked against him on the battlefield, seeing him overcome these challenges using his numerous skills enhanced with a dash of faith is what makes Daredevil's story so thrilling and exciting. We want to see him brought to the brink of insanity, thrown into the pit of despair, enter the gates of hell, and somehow manage to still live another day. There's something poetic in seeing a man crumble and manage to build himself back up again, even if he can barely hold himself together. But all this talk about Daredevil and darkness begs an interesting question. Can a Daredevil story be happy and light and somehow still be a critical darling? Is there a way to dampen the darkness of Daredevil and still tell a story that speaks to the core of his character? In 2010, Matt was in a horrible place. Marvel's headline event in the latter half of that year was titled Shadowland, which featured a mind-controlled Daredevil establishing martial law and reviving the dead in Hell's Kitchen as the leader of the Hand, a criminal ninja order that has haunted Matthew all his life. The comic was controversial to say the least, and as a person who actually loved the issues leading up to the event, I found the event itself to be pretty dull and boring to read. Daredevil needed a change at this point, and oh boy did he get one. The following year saw the Daredevil series relaunch. A new #1 issue is published on July 20, 2011. And wait a second. Is that Daredevil sporting a smile on the cover? And is it just me, or is this way more cartoony looking than his previous iterations? Huh. I wonder who did this. Okay, let me just look it up. And... oh. Huh. That's interesting. In 2011, Marvel tasked Mark Waid to reboot Daredevil, which was and still is one of the most interesting decisions the company has made in the world of comics. For those unfamiliar with Mark Waid, he's a comic book writer known for his distaste of the grim and gritty superheroes that dominated the 90s. He, along with the talented Alex Ross, were responsible for the creation of the acclaimed miniseries Kingdom Come in 1996, which was a direct commentary against the gloomy and cynical state of superheroes at the time. The book saw older versions of classic heroes like Superman, Batman, and Wonder Woman, reclaim society from the younger generation of vigilantes who had completely lost their sense of ethics and morality. Mark Waid isn't against all dark superheroes though. In response to an interview question by Roger Riddell about the hopeful DC Rebirth one-shot released in 2016, he says, "Yeah, that I appreciated as much as anything else. The shift in tone. The idea that not everything has to be grim and dark and ugly. It doesn't mean that all superhero comics have to be light and breezy and swashbuckling. There should be a wide range. The range is the important part. There should be a little variation. So not everything is dark and gloomy and evil and arms ripping off all the time, because then nothing means anything. Nothing has any impact if that's all it is." While Mark Waid has written dark superhero comics like Irredeemable, he's mostly committed himself to keeping Cape Comics fun. His version of the Fantastic Four is widely regarded for its humor, and his recent work at DC is a modern take on the silly superheroes of the 60s. In reference to Waid's quotes from earlier, the comic book industry is best when a wide range of stories are available, and Mark Waid's comics, especially in the last decade or so, help add tonal variety to the superhero genre. While Jason Aaron's Punisher, Al Ewing's Immortal Hulk, and Donny Cates' Venom engross older fans with mature themes and graphic violence, most of Mark Waid's superhero comics carry a lighter, more hopeful tone to be enjoyed by readers both young and old. So, when Marvel approached Mark Waid with the task of writing Daredevil, he couldn't follow in the footsteps of previous writers. He had to steer the sinking ship that was Matt Murdock's depressing life around, not just because he was more capable of writing lighter stories, but also because he couldn't make Daredevil's life worse than it already was.
But how many girlfriends can you kill? He's lost so many girlfriends. He's lost his wife. He's lost his friends. He's had his life and career destroyed over and over again. And it always becomes like the new writer will come on and go, okay, what else can I do to Matt Murdock to make his life even more miserable?
And they keep finding things.
I know, and I can't, even if I wanted to do that, I'm out of ideas. I don't know what else you can do, except make him deaf too. I don't think there's anything else you can do. So I said, you know what, let's run with that. Let's go with the idea that, all right, we acknowledge that all these horrible things have happened to him. But this is true of anyone in that circumstance. You get up in the morning and you have to choose whether or not to continue to wallow in the misery and depression and pain, or you get up one morning and you just go, you know what, I can't do it anymore. I have to start living the life I want to live rather than the life that has been imposed upon me. And that, to me, that's ultimately an act of heroism, is to get up in the morning and not worry about anything but how do I live the kind of life that I need to live to make myself happy.
This mindset is the foundation upon which Mark Waid's Daredevil is built on. Letting go of past trauma and pressing onward with a smile on your face. Because, hey, at the end of the day,
you're a superhero.
You have these cool powers. You're handsome, you're good, you have a successful career, you get to hang out with Spider-Man and Thor. These are good things. So revel in it.
Mark Waid turns the drab, dark Daredevil series into a colorful, exciting extravaganza that celebrates the joy of being a superhero. Many aspects of Daredevil comics are altered to bring about this lighter version of the character, and in this video we'll go into each of them, starting with the art. The first issue opens with an introductory page containing 21 panels recapping the origin of Daredevil. And even though all the creators responsible for this page don't actually work on the rest of the comic, it's a foretaste of the new artistic direction Daredevil was about to head towards. This book's creative team consists of colorist Javier Rodriguez and pencilers Paolo Rivera and later on Chris Samnee, who would become extremely close with Mark Waid and work on numerous projects together. As of April 2025, they're the duo behind Batman and Robin Year 1, an ongoing series you can collect right now that retells the origin story of the dynamic duo. Back to Daredevil, this creative team took the book's art in a completely different direction. While the 3 Daredevil series prior to Mark Waid's run feature heavy shadows, rough textures, and detailed renditions of characters and environments in order to complement the noir and crime elements of the book, Mark Waid's Daredevil contains brighter, flatter colors and a minimalist cartoon art style reminiscent of pop art and Silver Age comics in order to match the series' more comedic tone and its loving embrace of superheroics. Not only is the colorful art style a delight on the eyes for fans, its simplicity also allows the creative team behind this book to pull off incredible feats of artistry. Throughout the book, there's a huge emphasis on capturing the enhanced senses that Matt Murdock experiences in his day-to-day life and in his role as Daredevil. The first issue contains this gorgeous splash page where Matthew walks Foggy through the busy streets of New York, and we are shown multiple little things he notices using his superpowered senses. The smelly poop stain on the ground, the flapping of bird wings in the air, the trail of burning oil the truck leaves as it passes them by, the scent of tea tree shampoo in the hair of a blonde cyclist. Matt notices all of these little things throughout the book, and it makes for an extremely fun experience as we get a sense of what it's like to be him. But it's not all fun and games for Matt, and in his escapades as the Devil of Hell's Kitchen, we get to see his radar sense, a kind of echolocation that allows Matt to see what's around him, play a huge part in the action, visually represented by pink contours in the air that outline people and objects. These pink panels add visual flair to the book's action and also bring about some cool situations, like when Daredevil teams up with Spider-Man and identifies that the kidnapping taking place in front of them is just a holographic projection. Spidey could not believe it. One of my favorite visual displays of Daredevil's enhanced senses comes from Daredevil Volume 4, Issue 6, where he tries to single out a specific sound in the noisy Wakandan embassy located in Manhattan. I have to give credit to Javier Rodriguez for illustrating and coloring this. This must have taken ages to make. The overwhelming amount of panels on the page perfectly captures the cacophony of random sounds that Matt Murdock hears in the embassy and shows the difficulty of the task he's assigned himself with. And yet, despite the page being filled to the brim with details to the point of being overwhelming, the colors make what is happening very clear to the reader. The page mostly consists of green and yellow panels that feature the sounds and movements happening within the confines of the embassy. The red panels located on the top center of the page represent Matt Murdock, and the circles that ripple out behind him and spread throughout the whole page not only represent his enhanced senses, but also make him the focal point of the page. Even if we zoom out, Daredevil is the first thing we notice. What's even crazier to me though is that all the illustration and detail on the page is confined within the shape of the embassy itself. Somehow, even the architecture and structure of the building Daredevil is in is incorporated onto this drawing. The book is filled with insane art like this. Look at this page where Daredevil casually saves a woman from getting mugged as he's moving through the rooftops of Hell's Kitchen. Have you ever seen a page in a superhero comic that looks like this? I think not. The action sequences throughout the series are also spectacular, with a huge emphasis on depicting clear movement and motion while also experimenting with unique panel layouts. There's no shortage of amazing artistry on display throughout Chris Samnee, Javier Rodriguez, and Paolo Rivera's tenure on Daredevil, and I think these new elements, the poppy colors, cartoony art style, experimental panel layouts, and fun action sequences all play a part in making Daredevil a more fun and light book. But beyond the visuals, another key aspect of Daredevil's life was given a makeover. Let's talk about his love life. Matt Murdock's love life, while filled with shockingly beautiful women for a guy you can't see, is not exactly a love life any person would want to have. While I generally like the love interests that Matt has been with over the years, his relationships with most of them have ended in tragedy. Mila, a blind woman who Matt rescues on the street and later marries, ends up murdering an innocent bystander because of a villain's emotional toxin and turns mentally insane because of it. Heather Glenn, a socialite who falls in love with Matt Murdock, ends up becoming a drunk alcoholic who hangs herself due to loneliness from being neglected by Matthew. Now, not all his relationships end up destroying his partners to this degree, but more often than not, his romantic partners are left worse off after breaking up with him than they were before they fell in love with him. Even momentary flings, like the time Matt Murdock had an affair with his private investigator Dakota North, just made their relationship more awkward and uncomfortable. His relationship with Kirsten McDuffie, on the other hand, is pretty much a smooth and positive experience. She appears in the first issue of the series and introduces herself to Matthew as the new assistant district attorney. Things between them only start rolling in issue 7 when Matthew uses his radar sense to accidentally knock off a wine bottle in order to make hand contact with her, which is hilarious. Kirsten then asks Matt out on a date, which they end up having a few issues later. And fun fact, their first outing together is extremely unique, with Kirsten being blindfolded throughout the entire duration of their date to feel what it's like to be in the shoes of her new boyfriend. Kirsten and Matt are extremely hilarious together, constantly joking and flirting with one another, but what makes their relationship extra smooth is that Kirsten is totally fine with Matt being Daredevil. When a villain appears at the end of their date, she's sensibly scared, but doesn't dump him. Kirsten understands and accepts the danger of being Daredevil's girlfriend, and she actually even helps him in one of his missions. In fact, she admires Matthew's whole superhero shtick so much to the point that when the Lilac murderer, a criminal she helped put behind bars, comes back for revenge and attempts to kill her, she's kind of stoked by the fact that she now has an arch nemesis. She's kind of crazy, but in a good way that perfectly complements Matthew's life as a masked vigilante. Instead of Matt's love life being a source of trauma, guilt, and sadness, his relationship with Kirsten is a source of joy and happiness for him and for her. It's really nice to see Daredevil win in the world of romance for once. As you might have inferred from the video so far, this comic is funny. In the first issue, Daredevil kisses a newlywed wife who's part of a crime family, and later in the series, we find out that their marriage falls apart. During Christmas, Matthew wears an I'm Not Daredevil sweater for fun. In issue 23, while Foggy and Matt are having a serious conversation on a rooftop, Foggy tells a joke about Stiltman so funny that it sends both of them into a hysterical fit of laughter. You should go read the comic, it's a pretty good joke. This is also the Daredevil comic that features a kid in a school bus calling Daredevil Red Batman, Matt driving Silver Surfer's flying board with the wide smile on his face, and where Spider-Man approaches Matt Murdock on the streets twice and calls him Daredevil. Also, speaking of Spider-Man, this comic is where that viral image of Spider-Man being jealous of Daredevil and Black Cat making out comes from. So yeah, this book is pretty hilarious. But what you might not expect is the amount of sweet moments this comic has. Daredevil Volume 3 Issue 7 sees Matt take a bunch of blind kids out for a trip during the Christmas season. A deer on the road causes the bus to go off course and crash in a fleet of snow, leaving Matthew Murdock and the blind kids alone to fend for themselves in the freezing cold. While the story starts off with Matt as the hero, guiding the kids to shelter and dealing with their complaints and scuffles, the blind kids end up saving the day. When Matt becomes too injured to press on, the kids pluck branches from trees, assemble a wooden platform for Matt to lie on, and successfully drag him to safety. I have not read any Daredevil comic with as wholesome of a premise and conclusion as this one. Hats off to Mark Waid for writing a story this happy and hopeful for the Devil of Hell's Kitchen. There's actually another story in the series that radiates just as much warmth in my opinion. In issue 12, we relive the past and witness the origin of Matt and Foggy's lifelong friendship. It turns out that they were both roommates in law school who weren't close until Foggy was framed for plagiarism by a professor who hated his guts. and was on the verge of being expelled as a result. Matt, sensing that Foggy was telling the truth and that the professor faked evidence, conducted a trial in class to prove Foggy's innocence. The trial is an exciting spectacle to witness that culminates with Foggy standing up for himself and highlighting a piece of evidence that wins him the case and keeps him from getting expelled. It's really nice to see the incredibly sweet origin story of Matthew and Foggy's friendship and see just how much they depended on each other, even back in law school. In Daredevil issue 1, an extremely jolly Matt Murdock explains his uncharacteristic behavior to Foggy. I know I've been acting a little uncharacteristically since I returned Foggy, but here's what I need you to appreciate, okay? It has been a miserable last few years, and every time I thought I'd finally hit bottom, God somehow found me a bigger shovel. All this pain and all this loss, and I just can't bear the weight of it anymore and stay sane. I know that. So this is the way I've decided to be. You can say that I'm in denial, you can decide that I'm not dealing or that I'm a jerk. That's up to you. No offense, but I don't care. This is how I choose to cope. It's this happy-go-lucky mindset of Matt Murdock that makes the book extremely fun to read. It allows him to view Silver Surfer's board not as a dangerous alien object he has to embark on for his mission, but as a thrilling mode of transportation to get around the city. It's this attitude that gives him the guts to learn the violin on the spot at a crowded New York subway station, using the clicks and clacks of the moving train as a metronome to play in time with. Because of Matthew's extremely positive view of the world and life in Mark Waid's series, we get a much lighter Daredevil story, which was very much needed after years of constant turmoil and sorrow for the character. But you can't really deal with trauma by just forgetting about it and pretending that it never existed. While Matthew leaving his past completely behind him and not allowing himself to show any negative emotion is part of what allows him to experience some joy, it's heavily implied that his happiness is forced, a fun facade to cover up a deep sadness bubbling underneath. What makes this book incredible is that while it does bring Matthew to a happier place in life, giving him and us readers a break from the dour Daredevil stories that came before, he isn't a happy one-note character from a children's television show. His dark past still haunts him. It's just concealed by the colorful art and Matthew's forced happiness. Daredevil is still broken. In issue 7 of the series, right before Matthew busts out of his office wearing devil horns and an I'm Not Daredevil shirt for a Christmas party, Foggy checks up on him and sees Matt with a worried look. When Mole Man steals a bunch of coffins from a cemetery, including the one Matthew's dad is in, Matthew gets extremely angry about it. It's one of the only instances in the 3rd volume of Daredevil where Matt completely loses composure and breaks away from his jokey self. Turns out that after all these years, he still hasn't moved on from his dad's death. When the Purple Children, a group of kids with the coercive powers of Purple Man, blast Daredevil with all kinds of negative emotion, Matt is forced to look back on horrible moments in his life, and his repressed pain, grief, rage, loneliness, and despair burst forth from within him. Matt has such an intense emotional breakdown that he doesn't even resist the kids as they push him over a bridge and into a sewer. Happy Matt is just an act. That's all it ever was. And I can't pull it off anymore. I can't move. I can't breathe. I can't do anything. The villains of the comic also follow a similar theme of being goofy and colorful on the outside, but eventually revealing their dark side or becoming victims of tragedy themselves. Mole Man is a pretty goofy guy. He's a 5-foot elder who wears this pair of boxy blue glasses and controls a bunch of weird-looking creatures underground. In the comic, he steals a bunch of bodies from a graveyard, which is a really weird crime to commit. But later on, we figure out his motive for stealing the bodies, and it reveals how sad of a life he's lived. The reason why he commanded his Moloids to steal the dead was to find the body of Lorna, his previous office mate, was the only person to ever show him kindness in his miserable life. The Spot, a joke villain easily beaten by Daredevil in the first issue, returns in a different form in Daredevil Volume 3, Issue 19. Daredevil finds himself face to face with the Coyote, a villain who seems like an updated version of the Spot, who pulls off an extremely successful human trafficking scheme by torturing victims via separating their heads from their bodies. It's incredibly disturbing, and it even gets more disturbing once we find out that the Coyote isn't actually the Spot. The Coyote, in reality, has the Spot locked in a cave with several wires inserted in and protruding out of him. The Spot is being kidnapped to fuel the Coyote's powers, and it's absolutely sickening to see. Once again, Mark Waid baits the audience by showing us a silly character, and then later shocking us with a dark twist. Another dark twist in the comic involves Foggy Nelson, who hides a medical secret from Matt until issue 22 of the series: his cancer. The relationship between Matthew and Foggy throughout Mark Waid's Daredevil is pretty rocky. Even from the onset, Foggy isn't on board with this carefree version of Matthew. When Matt returns to office after being gone for several days due to his escapades as Daredevil, he finds out that Foggy dissolved their partnership while he was gone. Later on, we gain an understanding of why Foggy let Matthew go. After Matthew sincerely apologizes to Foggy in Daredevil Volume 4, Issue 22, Foggy tells him that he hasn't been entirely transparent to him as well, and reveals that he's been so harsh on him because he's been going through something horrible, a potential cancer diagnosis. And in the next issue, a page nearly absent of words confirms it. While Foggy's cancer is another way for the book to shock us with something horrible, the sickness becomes a motive for Matt and Foggy to bond given the potentially limited time they have left together. Not only is Foggy's medical journey throughout the comic heartbreaking, but it's also filled with some extremely meaningful moments that I will remember for quite a while. Now, I honestly don't know how to seamlessly transition from this portion of the video to my conclusion, but I do think Foggy and Matt's rocky but ultimately happy relationship exemplifies what makes this book special: its mixture of dark and light. In response to a question by a fan on Reddit asking about how difficult it was to pitch a bright Daredevil to Marvel, Waid had this to say: "It wasn't hard at all to get through Marvel. Really, it came from the fact that when I took the gig, I warned them that dark and broody wasn't something I was good at writing. Readers seem to have responded, because I didn't just shift Matt's personality to my whim. He very clearly is covering up some depressive issues, and if you're still reading, they're coming back to bite him in the upcoming issues. Poor Matt. You can't fake it till you make it forever, you know." In 2011, Daredevil needed a change. Matt Murdock was too downtrodden and depressed after all the horrors that writers had inflicted on him for more than 2 decades straight. Mark Waid, Paolo Rivera, Chris Samnee, and Javier Rodriguez somehow provided that change, creating a narrative for the Devil of Hell's Kitchen that had moments of genuine joy, laughter, and warmth, accompanied by masterfully crafted artwork that felt fresh, colorful, and exciting. But the creative team also made sure that some of Matt's happiness was a facade, hiding trauma and sadness underneath. By being both light and dark, not only was the Daredevil comic from 2011 to 2015 a pleasant diversion much needed for Matt Murdock, but it also managed to retain the sad and somber quality that makes modern Daredevil so special to so many fans. With comic book nerds being very resistant to drastic change, the financial and critical success of Mark Waid's Daredevil is a testament to how good of a comic it is. I can't believe that a lighter Daredevil comic was able to succeed and run for almost 5 years, and all it took to create it was a few men without fear. My name is Joshua C, and I will see you in the next one. By being both light and dark, not only was the Daredevil comic from That's a cockroach. I killed it. I killed it. Not so big, but I don't know if you can see it. Focus. Anyway,